It's Sunday morning, and most of you will be glad to know that the hook of the week continues. We finished the bucket we started with last week, but I have lots more to work from, lots of scrap material that isn't good for much more than making hooks out of. So we're going to keep doing Hook of the Week. They remain fairly consistent with how many people are watching them, and most of the commenters seem to really like the Hook of the Week videos. Now I know there were a few of you who were hoping this would come to an end and we can move on to more advanced projects, more tool-making projects, tongs, punches, hammers, making axes, making more household goods. But that's what the videos that I post on Wednesdays are for. And if we quit doing Hook of the Week, we might not replace it with anything. That might bring us down to just that one video a week or the occasional extra video. So in the interest of keeping a predictable upload schedule here on YouTube, I plan to continue doing Hook of the Week. And if I make changes, it'll most likely be just not hooks. We might start doing other projects, simple projects that use the same type of scrap material, and we might call it the beginner's project of the week. But for now, I still have some hook ideas, so we're going to explore some of those. Now, the one change that I will be making to the Hook of the Week series is that instead of working out of a single bucket until that bucket is empty, I will try to envision the hook that I want to make and then go find the material in all of those buckets that I have out there that seem suitable. And today I have chosen a piece of 1/2 inch by 3/4 inch flat bar. That means it's about 6 millimeters by 13 millimeters. And then to make some other parts, because this is going to be a 4-part hook, I have some 1/4 inch round bar, so 6 mil round bar, and some 1/8 by 1/2 inch, so that's about 3 mil by 13 mil. Doesn't really matter, you can adapt these to whatever size materials you have. And what we're going to make is a toothed or ratcheting style trammel hook that would be good for use over the campfire or in a fireplace with a fireplace crane, or perhaps for an adjustable chandelier or candle holder. I'm going to go ahead and cut the materials, and I'll meet you over at the anvil. That piece of bar was 20 inches long, so I've cut it into 2 10-inch pieces, so that's about 250 millimeter pieces. And I'm going to start with half face blows at the edge of the anvil, about 2 inches of material. I'm going to draw this out to a 1/4 inch square to make my hook part out of. And at this stage, I'm going to do both pieces the same. We're starting with those half-face blows. I do want this to taper a little bit as it gets towards the end. I think it makes for a more graceful looking hook. I don't have a goal length in mind for this, but in the interest of keeping them both the same, I think I'll just try to draw it out until it right there at the edge of the anvil, which is where it's at. Clean this up a little bit. Your anvil can be a very useful ruler for repetitive measurements. It ends up just being a hair longer, so I'll take the other one out the same. This one's pretty close to the edge of the anvil, so by the time I clean it up and get my taper even, should be about right. And if they're just a hair different, nobody's ever going to know. It isn't something I'd get too worked up about, but if you can make them look the same, you might as well. Well, let's make some hooks out of that. So I'm just going to start with a little curl on the end. And then we'll bend that into the hook. I would usually swing this over a little bit in the jig, but the tripod's in my way, so that's why I'm tapping it in like that. Not necessarily the recommended procedure. This thing gives me two relatively identical single-ended hooks, and if they're attached, it's kind of like an S-hook. And in practice, they will be able to slide past each other and hold their adjustment, and that's what makes for the adjustable hook. But to do that, one, they have to somehow be held together in a way that allows them to slide. So that's what this bar will be for. It will wrap around, rivet into one side, and then be captive so the other side can slide. And it has to have something that engages it so that it doesn't slip in use. And that's what this 1/4 inch round bar will be for. Now, this 1/4 inch round bar has to engage something, and for that there will be teeth in the back side of this bar. The 1/4 inch round bar will attach here and pivot. The 1/2 inch flat bar will attach on this side and make a collar that slides, but it doesn't need to pivot. So the next thing to do is going to be to lay out the tooth pattern or the ratchet pattern or whatever you want to call it in the back of this so that we can make that ratcheting piece. And in practice, that round bar has to engage this with a flat spot and then have a slope so that it can get up in there, and then that catches this. So we need to lay out evenly spaced teeth all the way up this bar to about here, and then we have to either cut them or forge them in, and you could certainly do either. I think we're going to do it hot at the forge today just because it's a more interesting way to do it. I think that's a good place for my first little notch, and I'm just going to go every 1/2 inch. This is still hot, so it melts the silver pencil a little bit, makes for a good bold mark. And I think I'll just go up to that point, and that'll be plenty of little teeth for adjustment. And then we need to lightly chisel each one of those marks so we can find it hot at the anvil. You see if this clamp's got enough play in it to hang that hook off the edge of the anvil. Be a really good way to hold this if it does. Yeah. It's It'll be just barely, but I think this is going to work. Handy tool. And I just need a nick that I can find hot. I'm not actually trying to cut the tooth this way, so it doesn't have to be very deep. Typically, I'd probably do this under the treadle hammer. Real quick and easy to do that way. So there are all of our little markers. Then to actually cut the notches, I'll use this butcher. I'll need to put a spacer in the anvil for that. But I should be able to then index those marks and forge the notches. So we just want to come in here and lightly forge these notches down as a starting place. And this is going to deform a lot, so we're going to have to do a little bit, straighten it, do a little bit more, straighten it again. That's one of the disadvantages to forging one of these, opposed to using a hacksaw and a file, or you could do it all with a file if you wanted to. And we will end up doing some filing on this. This will be less than perfect because it does pooch out a little bit on the sides. That's going to get forged back in, and that might create cold shuts, and there will be issues. And if we don't forge it to full depth and clean it up with a file, we should be able to remove all those issues. So we want this then to be something this 1/4 inch round bar will engage. And boy, that's pretty close right there. I think I'll clean a few of these up. But then we'll go to a file and finish it up. These are nearly full depth, and these back here could use a little work. The more even you forge it, the less filing you'll have to do. You also want to make sure it's good and straight when you're done, because it's not going to function very well if it's all bowed and twisted and crooked and has fat spots. So you'll probably have to surface file this a little bit too. But I'm going to let this cool, and then we'll file it. Now that this is cooled, I want to go ahead and file it. And that butcher I'm using at the anvil just happens to be the same angle as a triangular file. Don't remember why I made that tool, but maybe I was thinking of this when I did it. I mean, you could certainly make these more like saw teeth if you wanted to, but I don't think you need that many teeth in something like this. You just want the top side to be straight up and down. And I'm going to roll the file to this side a little bit, just so that this has an easier time jumping as you slide this up for adjustability. But this side you want pretty crisp, so keep it crisp. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish these. I don't think you want to watch me file every single one of these teeth. Okay, that's pretty good there. The other thing I want to do is make sure that these two pieces slide past each other nicely. There's a little bit of a high spot on this end and this end, so I'm going to file those down. You don't want any high spots that are going to cause this to hang up and jam. So for this to work properly, there has to be something here that wraps around this bar but allows it to move up and down, and that's connected to this piece. And there has to be something on this piece that not only keeps this from flopping around like that, but also engages in here. And that's where the 1/4 inch bar will go, so it'll have to be a little long and it's going to have to pivot. This one can be an exact size and it can just fit. So let's do that one first because it'll be the easier one to think about. Now we can actually go through and calculate this, but I really don't think we need to worry about that so much for what this is. I'm just going to bend it and cut it off. So I'm going to just hold that where I want it, mark the underside, and we'll put it in the vise at the mark, or a little beyond the mark so the got excess. I'm just going to put a 90-degree bend in there. Oh, did I not turn this on? Then I'm just going to use a little scrap of 1/4 inch thick material, as long as it is wider than this little tail here is long. Put that in the vise. And bend it over again. Then I'm going to stand that up this way. Just to kind of crisp that up and make the bend look a little bit better. Plus it spreads it a little, and that will give me some clearance so the piece slides, I hope. So there's our little collar piece, and that should go on here and slide. If it doesn't, we'll need to do a little bit of adjusting, and that's a little bit tight. We'll just fiddle with it a little bit till we draw it out just a little right on this top edge. Really all we're doing is just kind of spreading it a little on the top to try and give it that clearance. We can also file a little bit on the inside if we need to. So then when we assemble it, that will go on here and get riveted on. And one rivet should be enough. It's not a high stress piece. And this hook should then be free to slide up and down in that. You want to provide just a little side to side clearance when you put this on. But now the 1/4 inch round bar. Same idea, but this one has to be a little bit longer. We can certainly use this as a guide to see how long it is. You get a pretty good idea. This, I would rather have it a little bit too long than a little bit too short. So I'm going to cut it off right there. We'll need to take this bar to the forge. So I'm going to make a little mounting tab for this, a little round end. You don't want to get this too small, so spreading with a ball peen kind of helps keep it in order. Something just like that. I'll probably only put about an 1/8 inch rivet in this. It's not going to be holding that much stuff. So we'll see how big a hole I can get in there without making it look weak. I'm going to do exactly the same thing to the other side. This needs to then be bent in a U shape similar to that first piece. If you're going to make a lot of these, I'd come up with a perfect formula for all this and maybe make a little jig that bends this just perfectly. Because this is kind of a fiddly thing here, but I don't make very many of these. I don't think there's a big market for them, but if you got the right customer base, you might want to make a bunch of these. It's just hard to say. That's going to need to be straightened, but it's about the right shape. To a large extent, just putting it in the vise like that's all that's going to take. And hopefully we can come back to this and get the last little bit of it. Anytime you do these things over and over again, you start to find little tricks that make it easier for you. So if I were to do another one of these tomorrow, it would be a little bit smoother and easier, and I might have a better plan. That should be all the forging that needs to be done for our Trammel hook today. So it's now time to assemble this hook. You have to make sure you get it assembled right and everything going the right direction. If you cut your notches in the wrong direction, things aren't going to work the same as if you cut them in the direction that I have them. Nor can you assemble it with the notches on the inside like this. So things need to go together in the right order. This piece goes up here and will slide this way. And this piece goes down here, and this is riveted to the bar with the notches. This piece is riveted to the other bar and serves the purpose of a catch so that this can't slide up. Now you need to kind of check your notches here and see if they're going to grab that bar, and I think this is going to grab okay. But it also doesn't slide very smoothly, and that doesn't work for me. So we need to do a little filing, and as long as we're filing this to smooth it up a little bit, I'm going to try and clean this bit up here too so it engages the notches just a little bit better. And of course this is going to be kind of tough to hold on to because it's such small material, that we will do the best we can. Mostly what I'm doing is I'm squaring up down in here and smoothing up the other bar. Don't leave any snags. Then I'm going to file this a little bit smaller so it tapers some to get into those notches. The 3/16 rivet, which is what I decided to do here, I just do cold. They really aren't that big a deal, but we will need to heat this up just to loosen it up, make sure it functions. It's one thing to be riveted, but you don't want it riveted solid like that. And just like a pair of tongs, if you heat it up and move it back and forth as it cools, that will loosen up, and you should have a nice running little pivot there, and a little oil on it later wouldn't hurt. We know this goes together this way, and that still hangs up just a little. We may need to get in here with a file, or we may need to file the flat on this piece a little bit more, which might be the best thing to do at this point. Just doesn't run as smoothly as I would like, but it definitely locks in and won't slide. Okay, I gave that a good filing there. That runs much better now. They never run perfectly, so I think we're going to be okay. But I do think I'm going to heat this up, wire brush it, and get it all cleaned up so it matches this one. I don't want it bright and shiny. So this piece run through the forge and wire brushed, it looks a little bit better. Now we need to put this on here. It pays once again to assemble this the way it goes. In fact, you have to assemble it at this point. Once you put this in, you can't get it back apart. That way you're also sure you've got everything in the right order. Now to make sure this piece doesn't start to pivot over time, I'm going to take a square punch here. And I'm going to drive it down in the hole to create kind of a square notch in there that the rivet will key into. And I want to drive it deep enough that it gets some square down in the bar as well as just up here on the little collar. But if you're not sure, feel free to take it apart and do both. Again, just doing this cold is just fine. Well, I think we have succeeded. I had to fiddle around with the little staple or collar a little bit to get it to slide smoothly, but now it seems to work pretty well. And these don't really ratchet like a ratchet you'd use for nutting a bolt or anything, or even a car jack, but they will typically slide up. So if you start cooking with this at the highest heat, the pot lowest to the fire, then you should be able to slide this up, and hopefully it will then grab one of these teeth when you try to pull it back down. I've seen some of these little levers on them and all sorts of little things, but I don't know that it really needs that. And if you have to manipulate it and it's hot, you'll have to wear gloves. But it does work. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. One of the disadvantages to these, especially when campfire cooking, is this is the shortest setting. And typically when I'm just simmering something or keeping it warm, I want it real high. So a little short S-hook is still my preferred thing on the campfire. But this is a nice, interesting piece. And if you've got a fireplace crane in your big colonial fireplace, this would be just the thing you need. So that's it for this week's Hook of the Week. I hope you enjoyed watching that. That was a little bit more complicated than some of our other hooks. Anytime you have something that has multiple parts, and especially moving parts, it always gets a little bit more fiddly. But we succeeded in the long run. All you got to do is persevere, figure out why it's not working, make those little adjustments, and sometimes they're very tiny adjustments. And the more this is used, the more it's going to work in, and it should be a pretty nice, smooth working Trammel hook. I do hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. If you haven't done so already, I would love it if you hit that subscribe button down there. Ring the bell next to the subscribe button if you'd like to be notified when I make new videos. Stick around, watch a few other videos. Share the videos with your friends if you'd like. But then by all means, make time in your day to get out to your shop. Make something, but stay safe. Wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next one.